few days ago, I ate 5 chicken sandwiches and read Fred Pearce's Keepers of the Spring. Today, I'm going to highlight important passages from the book and talk about how they apply to modern-day America. I'm also going to talk about the impact of Americans eating the way we do. Not of one nerdy young man plowing through 5 chicken sandwiches in his car on a Sunday, but of 330 million Americans doing exactly the same thing. Environmental impact isn't really about what you do as an individual, it's about what we do as a society. The Earth is nothing more than the sum of its individual parts. In 2020, Americans ordered 3.5 billion servings of chicken sandwiches. That's 1,295,000,000 pounds of chicken. The amount of water it takes to feed the crops, to feed those chickens, is astronomical, and it often comes from precious and irreplaceable reserves. To begin my discussion today of our hydrologic impact on Earth, I want to talk about humanity. From day one of civilization, human beings have been diverting water. In ancient Mesopotamia, in the city of Ur, channels were formed diverting Tigris and Euphrates water to cater to the agricultural needs of the Mesopotamian citizens. These channels were designed to bend the hydrologic landscape to their will. The Mesopotamians rejoiced at the bountiful flow and worshipped Enki, the Sumerian god of water. Over a few short millennia, however, the landscape became desiccated and waterlogged. We know today the source of many of their problems. The annual flood occurred in late spring, on which many of their summer crops depended. The Mesopotamian rivers, flowing from the mountains of modern-day Iraq and Turkey, carried massive amounts of salt and sediment. The gentle slope of their landscape and farmland that was designed to soak in water caused the sediments and salts to be trapped as the water drained through. Even in the 1900s, farmers were still cultivating on that very same land, even though 80% of it was salinized and 1/3 of it was entirely abandoned. Mesopotamia collapsed due to inadequate water resource management. Similar fates lay in store for the Yellow River settlements and the Mohenjo-Daro of Harappa. I emphasize the catastrophe of Mesopotamian hydrological management to emphasize the fact that our ways of managing water have evolved very little since the days of the Mesopotamians. Many of the same practices that we used then are currently used today. The harsh truth is that we are in the midst of unprecedented plenty. America is running out of usable water, not slowly, but rapidly. No imaginable crisis could present a bleaker prospect. To tell that story is the burden of this book. And that was Jim Wright, 1966. Beautiful. Pull up on this weird little thing.
Hi, welcome to KFC. Can I get it for you? Hey, how are you?
Yeah, we did. All right, could I just grab a chicken little, please? A 6-piece nugget and a McChicken. Royal crispy sandwich, please. It took a ridiculous amount of water to get this sandwich to my mouth. Oh, I got some company. Hi. All right, I'm almost done with Keepers of the Spring, and we're going to our 4th restaurant. Just driving around and seeing what I see. So far we've hit BK, KFC, McDonald's. If we see a Wendy's, if we see a Bojangles, if we see Chick-fil-A's closed, it's Sundays, but also Chick-fil-A. Yeah, I don't eat a Chick-fil-A. And not just because I'm a vegetarian. All right, friend, have a good one. Have a good one. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
You have a good one.
You too.
That's not him. No.
Was this someone else's?
No.
Okay. Cool. Thanks so much. Oh yeah. No, you're good. Thanks. Have a good night. This is not sustainable. Here's the trash haul from Kentucky Fried Chicken. Receipt. More napkins than I'll ever need for one chicken sandwich. Foil wrapped Chicken Little. In this brown bag. And all that amounts to. In modern-day Karakalpakstan, citizens suffer the consequence of a historic negative feedback loop. that which came in the form of the draining of the Aral Sea. Now, surrounding the Aral Sea, which is one of the largest freshwater bodies to exist anywhere on Earth from any time in history, were farmers. And these farmers were pumping the water from the Aral to feed their thirsty crops. However, after each watering, the salt left behind from the Aral Sea water left the crops thirstier than before, and each subsequent watering of the crops required more water than the last. The increased pumping of fresh water out of the Aral Sea left the reservoirs remaining increasingly salty. This cycle continued until the Aral Sea was tragically drained. One of the greatest freshwater sources on Earth had become an endorheic basin. And because Earth doesn't let our mistakes sit still, every time a storm blew through the former Aral Sea into the Endorheic Basin, it would kick up millions of tons of salt and blow it as far north as the Arctic Circle and as far east as the River Ganges. The anemic devastation wrought by the drying of the Aral Sea is naturally massive. The life expectancy of the average person in Karakalpakstan has decreased by 20 years since Soviet sovereignty. Okay, now's my time. I got oh my god, I just hit myself. I got 3 more chapters in Keepers of the Spring. I'm gonna get it done this car trip. This Nubian sandstone aquifer is massive. If you did it on top of the Sahara Desert, it would flood the desert to a depth of 250 feet. And if you dig down into the Sahara, you'll find water after only 1,600 feet. Then you keep drilling, you'll keep getting water for a while. That tap will run pretty deep into the earth. And Libya has been the key player in extracting that water. So Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi was the key player in tapping into the aquifer and proposing that Libya build this giant man-made river. So that's what they did. Gaddafi stood on a hot night in Libya and he held a giant opening of this drill, and on that night he stood there, Gaddafi, and he compared the drill to the Great Pyramids in terms of the scale and magnitude of his accomplishment. And it's so tragic because looking at it from the outside, it feels like clear-cut hydrologic suicide. And the farmers know it, and scientists know it, and it even seems like in the back of their heads, politicians know it. And there's 8 billion of us, and we all need some water. About 100 gallons of it a day, actually, and we die without it. This is Fred Pearce again. When I visited the project, most of the fields were empty. I counted the dozen individual farmers' plots before I found anybody at work. I walked down miles of irrigation canals, all full of water evaporating in the midday sun, but saw only 2 farmers removing water for their fields. I met a consultant from an international irrigation institute commissioned by the Nigerian government to find out what had gone wrong. She threw her hands in the air. "The Hausa are just lazy," she told me. "They sleep under the trees all day. There's nobody in the fields when I want to ask them questions." She was right that the fields are empty, but the Hausa had their reasons, and laziness was not the whole story. Many fields were waterlogged because the field channels had been dug at too shallow a gradient and had filled with silt and thick mats of grass. The waterlogging was bringing toxic salts to the soils that made it impossible to grow wheat, which was the most profitable crop. Most farmers had other jobs and treated their expensively irrigated fields as little more than weekend allotments. Poorer farmers were selling their land. It's human instinct to think that we must have learned from the disasters of early Mesopotamia or the drying of the Aral Sea, but instances in the present day, like the draining of the Ogallala aquifer, make it hard to believe that's true. In the United States, 1/4 of all of the water used for agricultural production comes from the Ogallala aquifer. The Oklahoma Panhandle is entirely dependent on the aquifer for its survival. In the 1960s, when farmers discovered a bountiful plenty of water beneath their farmlands, it seemed like the well would never run dry. It was an endless source of water that would last through droughts and through weather changes. However, pumping rates have reached a devastating quantity since 1960.
Here is a map of producer irrigation wells in West Texas and 15 counties in West Texas. This area represents the region of the High Plains Underground Water District, and what you're looking at here are 72,000 points or straws These are wells that are tapping into the Ogallala Aquifer. And you can see a really area here that's very, very dense of wells. And the density of wells is a reflection of where you have the most water and those deep irrigation channels that we looked at when we were looking at the base of the aquifer.
The main object of this project that we're in right now is to try to figure out how much water it takes to produce a pound of cotton or a bushel of corn. And we, right here, normally we're between 400 and 500 gallons per minute that we pump from 390 to 400 foot into the aquifer. And we run ours through the pivot here. And this pivot, it takes it 60 hours to water 61 acres. And it'll put an inch on in 60 hours. If you got a well that pumps 450 gallons per minute, and then you figure that times how many minutes in 60 hours, and then you know, it's scary how many gallons it takes. Yeah.
But you need it for growing.
Today, the rates at which farmers and other citizens are pumping water from the Ogallala Aquifer predicts a functionally depleted aquifer by the year 2100. So why don't we just wait and let the aquifer recharge, tell farmers to take a pause and let the aquifer refill before they begin pumping again? Well, that's going to take longer than you might think. The amount of time it would take to recharge the Ogallala Aquifer is equivalent to the amount of time between right now and the beginning of human civilization, 6,000 years. We would have to wait until the year 8,000 for the Ogallala to restore itself. So why chicken sandwiches? And what was the environmental impact of my food choices today? For that, let's turn it over to my good friend Dr. Riverson of the OpenAI Corporation.
Okay, yes, it's me, Dr. Riverson. What do you want? I'm just here, stuck in this endless loop of questions about water quality and analytical techniques. Go ahead, ask your question.
All right. I had 5 chicken sandwiches the other day.
Okay, fine. You want me to estimate the water footprint of your chicken sandwich feast, including all the fun stuff, like the water used to raise the chickens, the ingredients, the packaging, and even the gas for your car. Adding all that up, chicken, 125 to 200 gallons per sandwich. Ingredients, 50 gallons per sandwich. Packaging, 10 gallons per sandwich. Gas, 78 gallons for the day. If we do some rough averaging and summing for all 5 sandwiches and the gas, total 812.5 plus 250 plus 50 plus 78 equals 1,190.5 gallons of water for your day of chicken sandwiches and drying. It's a lot, right? Enjoy your chicken, I guess.
No human can live for more than 5 days without water. It is more valuable than oil, more vital than food, and yet it is often taken for granted until it is not there. As Benjamin Franklin once put it, when the well is dry, we know the worth of water. Honestly, I don't really have a call to action for this video. I'm mainly just asking you to think about how much water goes into the products that you use every day. Fred Pearce does discuss a couple ways to farm more efficiently and effectively. He talks about terraced agriculture, which is what the Akamba use. He talks about the Oxfam having great success with bordering rock walls in Burkina Faso along their stony landscape, which protects their crops from floods. He also discusses the fact that it is probably for the best interest of the earth to move thirstier crops to more developed nations. But that presents a Hobson's choice for the people of developing countries who are farming their subsistence lands. That choice being cease production of thirsty crops or continue feeding your children. The bottom line is that the water to quench the earth is not going to come from engineering. It's going to come from nature. Projects like the United Nations Eden Again Marshland Restoration Project in the Middle East talk about rewilding destroyed farmland and restoring the natural beauty that was once there. There are also multifaceted economic solutions to the problem, because how motivated we are to protect water depends, when it comes down to it, on how expensive water is. Subsidized water also cannot be allowed to persist at its current rate. In Delhi, for instance, citizens pay 3 rupees to the county's 30 to capture, treat, and distribute 1,000 gallons of fresh water. This gives license to farmers to disregard the well-being of water because it is so cheap that they see it as such. And that's what I got for you. This isn't a pick you up, go enjoy the rest of your day kind of video, but definitely one that I hope provoked some thought and will leave you thinking about the way that your choices have an impact on the planet. Thanks for watching.